Welcome to Life Without Limits, where there are no limits to what you can achieve. My name is Joan Kayloor, and I am your host. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for counseling or medical advice. The information is meant to inspire and educate listeners, but not guarantee anything of any kind. For more information on my services, please go to joankayloor.com. Thank you. Enjoy the show. Welcome in, everyone, to Life Without Limits, where there are no limits to what you can achieve. I have another fascinating guest today that I am so excited to bring to you. Of course, we're going to talk about my favorite subject, but I want to introduce you to Sharon Ames. She has been a practicing attorney for over 35 years. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, she has credentials. She has practiced in the areas of family law, criminal defense, real estate, basic wills and estates, and municipal defense, and for the past 21 years, in the area of immigration law as the owner of Ames Immigration Law, PLLC. So we're going to get a special treat about immigration law towards the end of this podcast. Sharon is also a certified accredited EFT for emotional freedom techniques practitioner through EFT International and a certified accredited matrix reimprinting practitioner through EFT Matrix Reimprinting Academy. And there's more, and is a certified Eden Energy Method practitioner. I'm telling you, this lady is so gifted. She brings her extensive legal experience in EFT work to lawyers, judges, and others in the profession who are affected by stress, anxiousness, fear, feeling overwhelmed, and burnout. She works in person or online, and the best way to reach her is through her website, EFTlawyer.com. I will be taking you all through a tour of Sharon's website as we go in a little bit into the podcast. But first of all, I want to welcome in Sharon. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is
welcome all these opportunities to share EFT.
You are fascinating. So for for everyone that has left brain thinking and linear thinking, okay, we are about to knock your socks off, because what you may think of, maybe you've never heard of emotional freedom techniques, maybe you think all this energy stuff is woo-woo. Well, now there is a licensed attorney on my podcast who doesn't think it's woo-woo. Okay, and she's going to explain to us how she uses it in immigration law and in her practice. So, wow, welcome in, Sharon. How in the world did you find, first of all, what is emotional freedom techniques? Let me back this up for anyone that still doesn't know what it is. What is EFT?
So EFT it's a brain-based set of techniques that we use to focus on a problem that we have, that when we're surrounded by negative emotions and stress, overwhelm, burnout, all these feelings, it affects our life and how we function in our daily life. So EFT is a way to focus on our problems with a body connection by tapping on acupuncture points with our fingers. It looks really weird. But that sends calming signals to our brain. So while we're focusing on our problem and sending these calming signals to our brain, our body calms down, our brain calms down. We get out of that fight or flight response that keeps us from thinking clearly. And then we can focus on whatever we need to do, whether it's getting on with the next project at work during the day or dealing with kids, anything like that interrupts our day and gives us stress during the day.
Wow. And this is especially important now during this time. We are recording this in I can't believe it's May already, in May of 2020, and we continue to deal with the stress and the trauma of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's especially important now to have this
Absolutely.
tool. Yeah.
And lawyers are experiencing so many different stresses and emotions coming from all directions. So we know prior to the pandemic that lawyers experience anxiety, stress, depression, substance abuse, even suicide at rates much higher than in the general population. And there have been studies, many studies done about mental health in the legal profession and why we're in such dire need of taking care of ourselves from a mental health viewpoint. So lawyers today are working from home. If you work in a big firm, you might be worried about your job. You're worried about getting those billable hours in and losing your position within the firm. You also feel a loss of contact because a firm is like its own little community. So your means of human contact and being able to function well within a firm have been cut off to a large extent. For those who run their own practice, which is what my experience is, you have to do everything. And now all of a sudden you may be facing a loss of business. And how are you going to pay those bills? And if you have employees, are you going to be able to keep those employees? And all of the stress that goes around running a business in addition to doing the legal work. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine the stress that the legal profession is under. I never thought about it quite that way before, but attorneys and judges have the same stressors. I always think about the person being charged or the defendant or the plaintiff and the stress that they're under. But the legal profession is in high stress too.
Yes, especially if you're an attorney that goes into court a lot. I remember when I was a new attorney and going into court for the first year of my practice into criminal court or family court, which is where I started out. And I was terrified, just terrified. And when you're terrified, we all know that when we're terrified, we get that knot in our stomach and our breathing quickens and we just feel this so much in our body that we forget what we're going to say. We're so nervous that our brains aren't thinking clearly. And that's because our brains are designed to protect us from threats. So when you're feeling under that kind of stress, your brain literally shuts down. And I was terrified. If I had EFT back then for going into court situations, feeling that nervous, I would have been a totally different attorney.
Wow.
And it works so effectively.
So how did such a competent, intelligent, trained person like yourself come across EFT? How in the world were you introduced to it?
Your words are too kind, really. But yeah, interestingly, like about 8 years ago, my sisters and I were looking for alternative therapies for one of our family members who had a lot of significant health issues. And it was one of these cases where doctors didn't know what was wrong. And so we just began looking on our own for different kinds of things. And one of my sisters gave me this DVD from put out by Louise Hay, who I love, and Nick Ortner. And it had these people doing, weird things, talking about their problems and issues and doing these tapping things. And it looked really weird to me, but what I saw in the video was that it appeared to be very effective. So I was open to it. I had been studying with the Don and Eden energy medicine techniques. And so I began using tapping in my own life, in my own practice, to tap on these stresses that we experience as lawyers. And I just was amazed at how effective it was. And then one day, I didn't really use it on any clients. I was kind of leery about crossing that line and using it on clients. But one day, a client came in to see me and she had canceled a few of her previous appointments, which wasn't like her. And she's given me permission to share her story. And she came in and she just looked horrible. She was kind of limping and shuffling. She couldn't even raise her arm to take off her coat. And so when I got her in the office and I sat her down, I said, "What's going on with you?" And she'd been a client for over 10 years, so she trusted me. And she said, I'm sick, I'm diabetic, and the doctor wants to put me in the hospital tomorrow because my blood sugar is in the 400s, and they said that can't continue, so they want to stabilize me. So I said, well, then my EFT brain started to kick in, and I started asking her a few questions. I said, what is going on in your life that you think might be making you feel this way, making you so sick? And she related that when she came to the United States years ago, she had left her children with her mother. And this is a very common scenario in the immigration law field. Many clients come in with this experience. But then she had lost a son. A son had died in a civil war a few years earlier in her country. And she was overcome with guilt over leaving her children, over not being able to be with her son or see him before he died, those kinds of things. So we just tapped. I just started tapping with her, and in 45 minutes, when she left my office, she was standing upright, she was smiling, she was walking, she wasn't limping or shuffling.
Oh, wow.
She could raise her arm to put on her coat. She was an entirely different person. And then she called me the next day and I said, where are you? Are you in the hospital? And she said, no, I'm not in the hospital. She said, they tested my blood and my blood sugar was totally normal. So I didn't have to go into the hospital. And that's when I knew that the power of EFT, that
Wow.
there was something about this that I had to know more about. So I made it my mission, went on the path to become a certified practitioner and learn, and I'm still learning every day.
Right. So it sounds as though she had so much guilt and grief
Absolutely, yes.
that caused her blood sugar to
Yes.
get high. And then once you helped her release that guilt and that grief through tapping.
Yes, our emotional state, as we know, and the science is proving this now, our emotional state affects our physical health and vice versa. So there's always an emotional component to anything that's going on physically. And if we can help clear the negative emotions that are affecting us, then yes, it's gonna make you feel better. Of course, that doesn't happen all the time.
Right. Individual results will vary.
Will vary, and that was a very special experience for me. Normally, for people to clear out deeper issues using EFT, it takes a series of sessions, not just one.
Right.
Yeah.
From someone who has learned ethics and disclosures and disclaimers, and now I have an attorney as a guest, we will disclose and disclaim out the wazoo.
That's correct. I am not a licensed mental health professional.
I am, but I'm not a licensed attorney. So this is a great match. So what kind of stress, this may seem like a naive question, what kind of stress is a judge under?
It's interesting that you say that because one of my brothers just retired. He was a judge for 20 years. And it's interesting because when you ask him, there were very few cases that kept him awake at night. But when there were, the cases were very troubling to him. So you have that stress. You have stress from individual cases that might be troubling a judge about how they want to rule, or for what party they want to find in favor of. But judges also have an extreme amount of administrative duties and pressure to meet deadlines and not overload their calendar and postpone things. So there's what we call standards and goals, and they always have to meet, that are set out by the state where they practice, and they have to clear cases within a certain amount of time. And sometimes cases just don't lend themselves to that for many different reasons. So judges are under a lot of pressure, both administratively and in terms of the cases that they hear, depending on their where they sit. Yeah.
My mind is thinking into the future, and I'm thinking, I wonder what would happen if we took EFT tapping into the Supreme Court of the United States. Wouldn't that be interesting?
It's interesting because when I first started learning this, my first thought was, if the legal profession gets a hold of this, this can turn many things upside down.
Yes.
So I actually had, I was working with a person who had been in a horrific car accident and a head-on collision, and the other person was killed, and it wasn't his fault. But we were going to do some energy medicine work with him, and I said, let me ask you one question first. Is there a lawsuit pending?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a claim pending? And he said yes. And I said, then I can't work with you
Right.
until that's all over, because that could affect the outcome of the lawsuit.
Yes.
It literally could affect the outcome of the lawsuit. So I don't use any of this with anyone who has a pending case. But there are other instances where I have helped clients calm down before they go to court to testify. For example, a great example is in family court. If you have a client that has to testify in family court, and most of the clients, they're not used to going to court. Courts are not the most friendly places for people to relax and tell their stories. And so you've got a judge looking at you, you've got the other attorney looking at you, and these people in the courtroom that you may not know who they are. And it's terrifying to someone, especially if they're a victim of domestic violence, for example. It's terrifying for them to go in and have to tell their story in court. So I've used EFT with people to go into court just to calm them down again. And the reason you want to come down is so that thinking brain can kick in again. And they can be able to tell their story much more coherently and in a relaxed manner. And they won't get shaken up by the questions of the other attorney and the things that can, cause that stress.
That is so cool to be able to do that. A lot of times people will say, well, Joan, you can't make the pandemic go away. I go, no, that's up to the scientists. But what I can do is help you cope with it better. Because when you're calmer, you can start thinking in the front of your brain instead of being stuck in your amygdala in the middle of your brain, and then you can come up with a plan.
Exactly.
I mean, when this first hit, I used to tell people, I'm not afraid of anything except bungee jumping. And then this happened and I went, oh my gosh, now what? And I did go into fear. I went into terror.
Right.
All the what ifs that were streaming through. So I cried and I tapped and I prayed and I cried and I tapped and I did some Donna Eden energy medicine and I prayed and just the whole thing to calm myself down. And I'm still here. So wearing a mask when I go out since it's May 2020, but I was able to do some problem solving. I was able to think about how I was going to transition my clients to telehealth. So it does help you. Tapping calms you down so that you are able to put together a plan of how your life is going to be different. It is different because we're in a new normal now, but at least instead of being scared of the new normal, I'm transitioning into the new normal. And I think that's one of the blessings of EFT.
Yes. I anticipate, and I'm seeing it already, a lot of fears around when we do open up and have lawyers having to go back to court and clients having to go back to court, and the fear around going back to court and are we going to be safe? That's a huge issue right now that's coming up. So we're past the first part of the pandemic, and we've, tapped through, losing our prior lives and being angry or frustrated. And now we're looking to the future. And when we think about the future, fears are coming up. So that's what I see coming up a lot right now, is fear of what happens when we do open everything up, and are we going to be safe?
I went to the chiropractor today for the first time in 2 months. I've just been in so much pain, not having my usual adjustments. I thought, the heck with it. So I put my mask on, went in. He was wearing a mask. He had his infrared thermometer thingy. He took my temperature, and he had disinfected the table that I lie on. At that point, I was to the point where I don't care. Just get me on the table and fix my back. And it felt so good to be back, getting my adjustments and being able to stand up again without pain. What a concept. So yes, life will be different. I don't know. Hopefully they'll still occur. I have 2 conferences that I'm planning on going to in August. One is a little iffy because that one has 500 people. So I don't know if that will happen. But the other one, I'm really hoping that happens. And that's 50 people. So I'm hoping to still attend that.
Wow.
But yeah, we're going into a new normal. And I plan to go into it with facts and science and education. I think fear is crippling.
Yes, it is. And if you've experienced any kind of trauma, anyone
Oh,
who had, basically most of us have in some part of our lives, whether it's a big T trauma or a little T trauma,
mhm.
there are people, if you have experienced trauma, this may be bringing up all kinds of things for you.
Yes.
Um, so it's important to know how to deal with that as well, and
Okay.
recognize that, you're not crazy. And it's okay that you're feeling this way. There's a reason you're feeling this way. Your body's trying to protect itself. But there's a way to help relieve some of that, the effects of that trauma, so that you can move forward when things start to open up.
I just want to explain to our viewers and listeners, a big T trauma is when your life is literally threatened. God forbid there's a car accident, a plane crash, a fire, something that is actually threatening to your life. And a little T trauma is still a trauma, but it may be an unhappy event. It may be the way, whether parents, teachers, other students in school, maybe you were bullied, maybe parents said less than loving things. Maybe there, God forbid, there is domestic violence, but that could lead to a big T trauma if your life is threatened. So when Sharon and I talk about big T and little T traumas, that's what we're referring to. But however it happens, boy, when that happens, definitely EFT, and there is science behind it, how the evidence that EFT does work beautifully on trauma. So I don't want to go too off the beaten path here, but just want to explain what that's all about. Sharon, I want to take everybody to your website. So I'm going to pull that up. I know it's around here somewhere. Okay, everyone in the world, hold that thought. I'm going to find, and it's a beautiful website. Okay, let's go back to Miss Sharon. I love sharing. I love playing with Zoom. Okay, here we go. All right. So Sharon Ames Esquire. Oh, congratulations for having the ESQ after your name. Certified EFT and Matrix Reimprinting Practitioner. Now, we're not going to talk about Matrix Reimprinting today, but that is EFT on steroids. So if you all want to go to YouTube and type in Matrix Reimprinting with Carl Dawson, that is amazing. Both Sharon and I are certified in Matrix Reimprinting. So, okay, so I'm on the Meet Sharon page. Let's get it in gear here, Joan, and go to, what a beautiful site, I must say,
Thank
as
you.
Sharon describes how she helps people, especially in the legal profession. So many good things here. Boy, if that's not legal stress, I don't know what is. If that's not a poor, stressed out attorney, legal person. If you are listening, especially because this is going to be on social media and LinkedIn, if you are listening, please consider contacting Sharon, because she is just amazing in her talents and what she has to offer you, especially if you're in the legal profession. You know, I'm going to use the word holistic because I consider myself to be a holistic healer, but that doesn't mean we throw out other things. I combine cognitive behavior therapy with tapping for sure.
Right. And all the things that we're reading about now in terms of mental health in the legal profession, because we're now finally catching on. Mindfulness, yoga, meditation, I practice all of those things, and they're wonderful tools to have. Whether we're in a pandemic or not, those are just good tools
Exactly.
to take care of yourself anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And EFT is another tool. It's another tool that we use that works in particular ways and is good for particular things. Yeah.
And I'm going to step outside. Well, I've never lived in the box, but I'm also going to suggest that everybody who's listening, whatever your profession is, if you're interested in EFT, fantastic. I'm going to put a plug in here. Go to EFTTappingTrainingInstitute.com, browse EFT, and if you're already using it, please consider getting certified. Please, please, please. Because really, that's the wave of the future, because it's coming to the point where individual states are going to start requiring energy healers to be certified from reputable associations. So you just can't be out there just tapping away unless you have some solid training behind you. Another really cool thing about Sharon is that she's bilingual. She speaks Spanish.
Señora.
Sharon, for anyone who's listening that speaks Spanish, could you, because you're far better at this than I am, could you please invite them to your website and invite them to learn EFT?
Ok, bueno, bienvenidos a todos que hablan español. Si ustedes tienen sentidos de presión, si están inundados de trabajo y todos estos sentimientos de estrés que les está afectando, les invito a visitar a mi sitio web, eftlawyer.com, y mandarme un mensaje. Yo me gustaría contactarles, comunicarnos, charlar sobre lo que les está afectando. Muchas gracias.
Oh, de nada. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Okay, certain people that are listening right now, you might want to make an audio clip of that. Thank you very much. Sharon, it's been such an honor and joy to have you on the show today. Thank you for what you bring
Thank you
to
so much.
EFT world and helping people de-stress in the legal profession and around the world. Honestly, folks, you can't do better than calling Sharon. So Sharon and I talk to people all over the world. So contact either one of us for help. We would be honored to serve. And remember, life without limits, because there are no limits to what you can achieve.